just said, I thought you were going to get heaven and get chained, big man, for this. That, if nothing else, tells you a wee bit about me in this life. But I'm here to tell you something about another life, a past life. Unfortunately, it takes somebody obscure like me to bring our history to life. Sadly, that's a fact. Scotland is one of the few European countries where children can pass a whole school career without being taught their own country's history. To deprive young people of their history, knowledge of their country's history, is to condemn them to an atmosphere of ignorance, half-truths and prejudice instead of understanding intelligence. Who said that we're not topical? This weekend's Daily Mail, 2 whole pages, would you believe this? So why is it that Scotland, a nation so immersed in its own history, is producing generations of children deliberately starved of all knowledge of their rich and varied past? Saturday's paper. It's beyond me anyway. I'm a descendant of my father, as you are of yours, of course. My father's a descendant of my grandfather. My grandfather's a descendant of my great-grandfather. In fact, today, 22nd of January, my grandpa Clements would have been 113 years old. All of which takes me back, these 2 or 3 fathers ago, takes me back to the 1800s. My grandpa was born in 1896. That's just 2 forefathers ago. Now see if you say 4, 5 forefathers ago, 6 at the most, get back to the 1700s, man. If you could line them up and talk to them, just 5 forefathers, man. Get back to the 1700s, to the time of Robert Burns and the Bonnie Prince and people like that. That's how close you are to the past in this year of 2007. Irish people and Highlanders came into the central belt in Scotland looking for work from the 1800s onwards, and so made up the beginning of a whole new culture. If you're Scots, and like most people, like me, you don't know about your ancestry, maybe beyond your grandfather, you might well personally be involved in the outworking, the threads of this story. In fact, if I was a betting man, I'd put money on it.
Come gather round and settle down, I've a tale to tell to you. It may appear to be far-fetched, yet every word is true. So open up your mind and ears, prepare to be amazed. This Duncan takes you back in time to darker, harder days. You've heard of David Livingstone, at least I so presume. Well, the books I wrote about a man could damn near fill this room. His forefathers, their tales you'll find hard to believe. The things that they got up to, what they did and what they see. We've a murder in the family, that's a good way to begin. And a fugitive from justice turning hermit for his sin. There's a man lived through Culloden and only just admired must be said, saved by the up and banner that he tied around his waist. The up and banner, there's a tale it only just survived, when stinking Billy burned the flags to prove the clans had died. Just wait till Duncan tells you how it was saved unlike the rest. You can bet your arse in school they don't teach history like this. And then we have three brothers who had figured out a way to save the bones of poor old James and carry them away. One who came to Blantyre Mills to try to find a job, and he wed the tailor's daughter. This one really knocked it off. And America's great civil war gets mentioned in our tales, and a changing of identities to protect the family name. That's enough for me, I'm only here to set the scene. The big man standing ready, he'll explain what all this means. In our tapestry of history there runs this single thread of Livingstones who for generations have touched, it must be said. So many of the stories of our past and bygone days, and that thread when joined with other threads shapes the world we know today.
Ladies and gentlemen, the story you're about to hear of is woven around the ancestors and descendants of David Livingstone, the great explorer. It's not about him, but it is about them. Warriors to a man, and I do mean warriors. Scotland is my land, it's my life, my soul, ever has been for hundreds of years. And I'm here in this 21st century to tell you about the story of just one family who helped to shape everything that you and I are now. These stories, like the threads in a kilt or a coat, when brought together, joined up, they make a valuable possession. And that's what we have now in our history, if only we knew it. A friend and mentor of mine in this life was the Scottish author Nigel Tranter. And Nigel used to describe it like, he said, history was the memory of the nation. And if you forget your history, his illustration was you become like an old person who's got that cursed disease, Alzheimer's. They've lived if you can picture it, they've lived a whole life, full life, contributed a lot to it, and then they get this cursed disease, Alzheimer's. They can't remember their past life, a thing about it. They don't even know what their name is. They don't even know what's happening today. Now the mental picture of that, in your head of that old person, is pretty sad, I'm sure it is. How much more so if a whole nation forgot its memory, its history. When we die and are buried or burned, our bodies are gone, but the atoms remain in the ground or in the air and become part of the cycle again. That's a fact. When you think about it, the atoms of our very first parents, Adam and Eve, are still on the earth today. They don't go into the space, they stay in the cycle. I wonder sometimes if that's why we're born with this mysterious sense of history. Because it's already there. But that's why I'm also confident in the truth of this story, because I was there. What you're looking at now was born in 1950. At school I was taught about battles and times and events, but somehow I knew they weren't telling me everything. Maybe you felt like that when you were at school. As I grew up, matured, my independent nature had me research things like this, and as soon as I saw this story, I recognised it for some reason. Our story starts here, Ardnamurchan. It's a dark, cold night, and we're near the year 1600. Some of us are out in the hill watching cattle. There was always a danger of reavers. That's why we were there, to protect it. I've no idea where they came from, what direction or how many of them there were. But these McDougals who came to Lorne achieved the surprise effect they wanted. Enough to deprive us of 2 head of cattle. But worse still, worse, there was a guy called John Macleay, who in the dark thought he had caught one of these McDougals. And he drew his dirk and he plunged it in. It was one of our own Ardnamurchan people. John was horrified and terrified he'd be blamed for the murder. We knew what had happened, but John didn't hang about. He disappeared for Ardnamurchan life that same night. I know where he went now, through the research. I know that he went and he settled in Appin, in the forest in Appin, which is just north of Oban. My 21st century friend here, my maestro friend James McKenna, will sing you a song about poor John.
Ardnamurchan land o' the gales, nae farther west can ye go. Fairmen a living fae rough, Gran Macleay's the land they did sow. Gifts o' the land and the gifts of them was their fealty to the clan. The gowd up there was the cattle in the hills o' Ardnamurchan. A treacherous nest of vipers fae far off Lorne they came, for plunder to add to their chattels, a sleek and dangerous game. Ben hills in a peaceful gloaming, come McDougall's band a reaving. Macleay's cattle being their target, and the black night intent to thieve them. John's crouching up and on the hillside, his cattle he was a guarding. A holler and dirk and torch flashing, come crashing o'er the bracken. Turning about, they ran like sheep, each climbing on top of the other. John slew a neighbour, heading home in the dawn, and left him dead in the heather. As the wind went in and it pierced his head, the moon lit up his face. It's a family friend called Neil Mackay, the shame, remorse, disgrace. Carry face his clan or his family, his head's born in with walking into the hill. The gibbet is sure to be his fate, nothing left now for him but to flee. So he fled to the open forest to hide, to live and be free.
John Macleay, I know for a fact, took up residence in Appin country. He'd run away in the clothes he stood up in and had to live off the land and what it could yield to him. He never did go asking people for things in the nearest village in case they asked too many questions of him. So he became a hermit, living like an animal in the forest. Occasionally, a traveller or a local would catch a glimpse of something moving through the bushes and the trees. He was obviously no threat to them, since nothing had been stolen, nobody had been accosted. But John looked almost Neanderthal by now. What must the local people of Appin thought of this poor creature? No one knew how long he had been there. He'd been there for years, but no one knew how long he had been there. This is a song written by Ian Davidson and our friend Dave Gibb will sing.
Mother, there's a monster in the forest. Callum saw it running through the glade. Parts of it were bare and parts were long haired. Then it disappeared inside the shade. Now Kirsty, don't be scared by any stories. Father says it must just be a man. Some have heard him humming in the bushes. Every time he called away he ran. Mother, it's a wild man in the forest. Callum saw him standing nearly bare. Saw him eating hazelnuts and berries, trying to catch the rabbits for the snare. Ah, Kirsty, that's enough for Callum's gossip. There's just no need to cause us all alarm. The poor man must have reasons to be hiding. Doesn't seem to mean there's any harm. But mother, all the girls have seen the caveman running past the ridge below the bed. And Callum says he's found a Stone Age hideout among the rocks and caves well up the glen. They'll gather up some food that we can spare. We'll leave it for the Stone Age man to eat. To keep him warm, we'll give him some old clothing, give him some old shoes to spare his feet. But mother dear, the Stone Age man stood watching as Callum felt the thanks he wouldn't say. He dare not raise a smile but kept his distance. He only waved his hand and walked away. Well, Kirsty, the village had a meeting. The men and women say we'll even be. If strangers come and ask, we'll just say nothing. He suffers as it is just to be free. If strangers come and ask, we'll all say nothing. He suffers as it is just to be free.
As the years passed, no one was able to get near to this unfortunate John. He became like a local mystery legend. Then one day, hunters for the village were out on the hills in Benabitha, above Ballachulish. They were tracking for food for the families. Somebody saw a movement on the hillside. A shot rang out. Somebody thought it might be a stag or a wild boar. but I bolted for cover. They can see clearly now there's a human being of sorts. And they give chase and eventually trap it into Glenachulish in a cave where he'd run into. They smoked him out and out he came, terrified. Just a mass of long dirty hair, almost naked, like a Stone Age man living in a cave. He's no more sinister than they are, just the poorest of wretches that they'd ever seen. John doesn't give his name when asked, in case they recognise the name from where he came from. So they give him a Gaelic name of Molach, which means the hairy man, the hairy Stone Age man who was still living. The living Stone Age man. Some say that's where the name Livingstone developed. I don't know. Sounds plausible, I suppose. But the name was adopted and passed down through the generations. But the sad life that had been John Macleay was about to take a turn for the better.
Come with us, he said. You've been out here far too long. Hear our words, they said. Get you food and drink and give you clothes to keep you warm. Come away. Come with us, they said. We'll help you all we can. Hear our words, they said. There's nothing now to fear, and we will shelter you from harm. Come away. Leave me be, he said. You don't know what I have done, or why I feel I have to shun my fellow man and try to hide from my own conscience if I can. I know I never will be saved from guilt I'll carry to my grave. Just leave me be. Come with us, they said. There's nothing you should fear. Hear our words, they said. The good Lord gave you life, and there's no need to waste it here. Come away. Far too long, he said, my soul is born a stain of all the blood and tears and pain, and now I long to listen to your laughter, words and song. And though I never will be saved from guilt I'll carry to my grave, if you allow me then I'd like to follow on. God knows I've been alone here far too long. Come away, he said. Come away, he said.
John did come away from that life of the hermit, and eventually he married a lass in the village there in Appin. He had a large family and he saw them grow up in a more stable environment than he'd been used to for years. The living Stone Age man was becoming quite civilised and leading an ordinary life at last. But Scotland in those days, I'm not talking about in those days, much the same now, was still the land of the warrior when required. We're talking about the early 1600s here now. Values then were not as values now, that's for sure. A blood feud could be easily carried on through the generations. The loss of the boy from Ardnamurchan was never forgotten. Family members would take it in turn to search out the perpetrator of the death of one of their own. Then one day, when it couldn't have been further from his mind, John stood face to face with his worst nightmare. who had come calling from Ardnamurchan to collect the debt.
It's all gone wrong just when I thought I had it made, and I thought the past was fading fast with time. I suppose I just relaxed too much, switched off as some would say, but as usual life had other things in mind. The only guarantee in life is you'll make it to the end, and how long before you get there no one knows. 'Cause where they place the finish line is anybody's guess, but what's for you won't go by you, I suppose. So I'm lying here beneath the trees and there's nothing I can do, as I'm caught between the sunlight and the shade. Past crept up behind me as it was always bound to do, and I'm waiting as the light begins to fade, and my soul is getting ready to escape. Too long now I've tried to hide these hands that have been stained by the blood I spilled so many years ago. And blood runs in the family, as a foolish man might say. If people won't forgive me, that I know. It was all so long ago, and Jesus knows I did my time in the wilderness with a bitterness and pain. And now I've found a place in life and a family that's mine. I thought they had allowed me to escape, but I'm lying here beneath the trees and there's nothing I can do, as I'm caught between the sunlight and the shade. The past crept up behind me as it was always bound to do. I'm waiting as the light begins to fade, and my soul is getting ready to escape. But now they've called me to account for a debt that must be paid. I suppose that's just the way it has to be. I killed him, now they've killed me, what more is to be said? That's how it's done, so it seems to me. But I'm lying here beneath the trees and there's nothing I can do, as I'm caught between the sunlight and the shade. The past crept up behind me as it was always bound to do. I'm waiting as the light begins to fade, and my soul is getting ready to escape. Oh man, I thought I had a future I could build for me and mine, but as usual life had other things in mind.
The business one particular day in 1707 was the uniting, I find it hard to say it, Scotland and England. Now listen to this, the people of Scotland were absolutely incensed. It's recorded in history because they never had a single say in it. You couldn't get into Edinburgh the day the charter was to be signed. It was like everybody in Scotland had came to Edinburgh to try and prevent it. There were riots all over the country. But here they were to try and prevent this indignity. And I can tell you this, the earls and nobles who sold their votes to the English for their signatures were so terrified of being torn apart by the mobs, I'm not making this up, this is a fact, they were forced to do the signing in a, nearly swore there, in a cellar in the High Street, number 77 High Street is still there, opposite the Tron Kirk in the High Street. That's where they signed away their rights. They were paid for it though, of course they were paid for it. The main mover and signature to this, or one of the main movers, was a man called the Earl of Stair. And the astonishing news came the next day, at the exact time of the signing, he collapsed and died in a fit of apoplexy. Some said it was God's judgment on him, and I hoped that the same would happen to the rest of them. But it wasn't hard to see that worse was to follow for Scotland. A new parliament in England taxed the whole of Scotland, not England, just Scotland, taxed Scotland to get back the bribes that they paid the earls and the nobles with. Injustice led to injustice, and you'll know these words. What force or guile could not subdue through many warlike ages, wrought now by a coward few for traitors, hirelings' wages, were bought and sold for English gold. Such a parcel of fucking rogues in a nation. I have in a wee parcel here the accounts, right there, of what every man was paid, how much, by whom. And it's damnable, absolutely damnable. No matter what you think nowadays, that's how the people felt then. I've just compacted 100 years of history there, and Jim is going to sing you this song, compacting that 100 years.
Livingston Stuart's come to their own when Charles the First was on the throne. Religious strife cuts like a knife, leaves a nation ill divided. Montrose declares for Charlie's right, and for him for the death would fight. But at Greyfriars in the dead of night was born the Covenanters. And time rolls on, time rolls on. The wheat king's easy swayed, and the bishops he'd look Charlie, he decreed, we must read the prayer book, and all hell broke loose. The royalists were again, and still they shed their blood for the royal nitwit Cromwell. Ruddy Blue slew the royal household peoples, dislike gold, Puritan, poor and false. Great protector dies, populace decides that Charlie's son should sit on the throne where he had sat. And time rolls on, time rolls on. The royal right, says Charlie's son James, should wear the crown forever. Return paper alone, no worthy of fool. Dutch Billy was crowned, he said never. Our Parliament sold for Westminster gold, and people were sorely inflicted. The seeds of rebellion were now taken hold, and a battle is soon to be started. And time rolls on, time rolls on. So the clan's been led by the Earl of Marfest, German Jordy who'd come far, and the Sheriff Muir with a battle. Nobody knows the winner. James got fair Rome to claim the throne, sent we son Leone's own. and he led the clansmen on and on. Nearly reached to London, I nearly reached to London.
I think we'll take a wee interval now. You can freshen up with a cup of tea or whatever you like. And we'll be back on 10 minutes or so.
Little Watty was coming, little Watty was coming, little Watty was coming, little Watty was coming. Duncan's coming, Donald's coming, Colin's coming, Ronald's coming, Dougal's coming, Lachlan's coming, Alistair and Oz coming. Little Watty was coming, little Watty was coming, little Watty was coming, Jock and Tam and Oz coming. Borland and his men's coming, the Camerons and MacLean's coming, the Gordons and MacGregor's coming, all the Dooney Wassels coming. Little Watty was coming, little Watty was coming, little Watty was coming, Jock and Tam and Oz coming. The Laird of Macintosh is coming, Macready and McDonald's coming, Mackenzie and McPherson's coming, all the wild Macraw's coming. Little Watty was coming, little Watty was coming, little Watty was coming, all the wild Macraws coming. They gloomed, they glared, they looked sae big, at ilka strop they'd fell a wig. They'd fruck the woods to the Pope hoods for money's a bare arses coming. Little Watty was coming, little Watty was coming, little Watty was coming, McGillivray fragrant glass is coming.
In 1715, the raids in Scotland drew some support for the exiled King James VII. They tried to seize the crown back to its rightful house, but it peters out with indecision and uncertainty, and the result of the Battle of Sheriff Muir. Even Rob Roy McGregor couldn't sway the day. There was great names there. There was MacDonalds, Camerons, Lammonts, Stewarts, Livingstones and many others. Great supporters, great family names, but just no enough. Then 30 years later, on the 19th of August 1745, a royal prince raised a standard, Stuart standard at Glenfinnan. What a day that was. He declared that supporters should meet there by midday. And this would be the quest to return the Stuart to the throne. We were there early, but by midday there wasn't any more than about 150 people there. And you could see the disappointment. We waited and waited. a few more hours, and then about 3 o'clock, something happened to change everything. I had a course of Scottish history. It was indistinguishable at first, but a swarm in the distance. It got louder as it got nearer, getting louder and louder. It was caverns coming this way. You saw the outriders first, and then the mass. There must have been 1,000 of them, ready for it, there and then. You could see everybody standing round about you getting taller. What a sight it was, what a fantastic sight it was. It was a signal for every other clan in Scotland to emerge, and it was like that was all they needed, because to the left and right of our hills came all the clans. Macintoshes, McGilvery's, Graham's, MacDonald's. The Stuart standard was raised. There was easily 2,000 clansmen there to see the Royal Stuart unfurled that day. And amongst them were 4 brothers by name of Livingstone. I had descendants of John Macleay, that naked, hairy Stone Age man. The government sent its armies to try and catch and destroy us, but we were too good and too quick for them. It went very well until the Prince decided to invade England. We went down in more ways than one. We were forced to turn back when we were so close. No supplies, no support from English Jacobites or French Jacobites who had promised much. And in the middle of winter. It was a long way home from Derby.
Jacobites fought and reached to Derby, enemy dead strewn every day. Less than 100 miles to London, Charlie's wanted to go all the way. But Lord George Murray, who'd planned the campaign, he's told Charlie we were going home. So we angry, bitter feelings take a lot and they came. Soaked and starving, low in spirit, mustered their separated men. Some to Inverness, some lay on Gress, while their captains planned the where and when. They knew that Cumberland was at near, and should we fight them there or should we stand? Advance to catch them, drunk and sleeping, was agreed to be the final plan. April 15 to March to Nairn, led by the Moray, the clans made their way through the night to surprise the redcoats who'd been toasting the Duke's birthday. Early morning, catch them called there, panic them into flight and disarray. Charlie's host would catch and rout them, send them fleeing on their way. Cold and hungry, lost in darkness, hope of surprise is gone with the coming of the dawn. Come the clan call, take a lord and to fight a battle early morn. They were shot away by fife and drum, and the blizzard sere in Linnery. Charlie placed clans in the muster where Murray said they'd be right to be. Up in Stuarts they were sorely beaten. Donal he broke free, decides to up and flee. Fallen stumbling, there fell clansmen, Stuarts all tired in the mud and sea. Stop and bend and then to grasp it, flung it round his cell, just like a plate shot by a redcoat's roundest musket. The banner folds his life that saved, with torn bodies they hastened homeward, quickly spraggling through the rugged land. The wounded brothers come to their cottage and were cared for by their mother's hand. Then they took to the caves and hillside, the Stuart standard to hide away, chased by redcoats, spies and traitors, wits and wisdom won the day.
This thing. Lord George Murray had taken personal command of every battle and won them all, on the way to England and on the way back. But there was trouble between him and the Prince. Murray was an experienced general and the Prince was an ignorant novice who took advantage of his own title and refused to listen to people who knew better than he did about the terrain and the military situation. The Prince then decided that he wanted to take sole command of the upcoming battle at Culloden. Lord George advised him not to fight in the open moor. Highlanders don't fight in the open moor, they fight in the hills. He said, cross the Nairn and water and fight them in the hills there. That's where you'll beat them. But he wouldn't listen. He was a glory hunter, like most of the Stuarts. Losing so many men at the Battle of Culloden was absolutely awful. What's that again? The Battle of Culloden there, that's a slide there. And there's a flag there. See this one here? That's the Stuarts of Appin flag. A wee bit more of that to come. We were destroyed, totally destroyed by the government cannon before we even decided to charge. Before he gave the order to charge. We just stood there and took it. The nature of a battle like that in those days saw hands, arms, heads and legs lying everywhere. Can you imagine the blood-covered snow? Government troops were covered in it. You couldn't make out the true colour of their tunics. They were insane with bloodlust. Wounded and dying were stripped, tied to trees and skinned alive. I came across that slide. There's an engraving I had years ago. There used to be a guy called John Toy, worked for STV, and when I showed him that, he said that. You must come into STV and show us some of these things. Somebody around about the table said, human beings didn't do things like that. And he said, the worst thing that you can think of to do, you can guarantee that somebody, some human being has done it to another somewhere. And that's what they did to wounded and dying people on Culloden Moor. They used the skin for belts, bags, lampshades. And this went on for 2 days and nights after the battle was well won. As the dragoons made their way to Inverness, they plundered and slaughtered all the innocents on the way. Crofts and cottages were burned, And anybody, regardless of age or sex, was butchered. A young mother ran for her cottage with her baby in her arms. She was run down by a horseman who sliced her head with sword cuts, grabbed the baby by one leg, swung it round in the air, and flung it and trampled it into the snow. An 82-year-old woman and her husband, who had nothing to do with anything. They lived in a croft halfway between Culloden and Inverness. They came out to see the troops going by on their way to Inverness after the battle. They were set upon. She was raped by the soldiers who held her husband down to watch. Then they took both of them round the back. Well, worse to follow. They held him as they stripped the old woman naked, put her on a spit and roasted her, and then let him go. They won't tell you things like that in school. Those of us who did survive retreated into hills and glens, in utter confusion, never to rise again. It was the end of a way of life, the end of wearing tartans, the end of carrying weapons, playing the great pipes, clan banners, well, all but one anyway. The Stewards of Appin Standard had been saved by one Dr. Livingstone, an 18-year-old boy who was wounded at Culloden. He fell over the guy who was carrying, the last guy who carried the standard, and he ripped it from the staff, wrapped it round about his waist. It was a huge big flag, and he ran for the field. And then running, a red coat caught him in sight and pulled the trigger and shot him. And the bullet went in, but it didn't pierce his skin because the folds in this flag were so big that it saved him. So effectively, he saved the flag, and then the flag saved him. He knew that this symbol, big blue flag with a yellow saltire on it, may well inspire his kinsmen in the future, but it had to be hidden meanwhile. Every other banner was taken to Edinburgh and ceremoniously burnt by the public hangman as the end of the Scottish way of life, and it was. James Stewart of the Glen, meanwhile, took the banner from Donald's mother and hid it in Castle Stocker, which sits on a wee island up there in Appin country, just off the mainland. And there it stayed until the beginning of the 1930s. I'll tell you more about that later. The Stewards of Appin banner was missing from Cumberland's Rath, and so passed on to legend, thanks to Dr. Livingstone. You can see that banner today in Edinburgh Castle.
Take your banner and we'll hide it so the English will always know the Stewarts never let their colours go as they left Culloden. They hid in the heather and they hid in the caves and in any old croft where they were safe while Redcoat strove to put them in their grave. Touch the Stewart standard. James of the Glenbeam, chief of the clan, was keep the flag by the Livingstone man. Keep it safe as long as you can, for the butcher wants it badly. Mad Cumberland, this war is won to the healing way a life is done. You'll ne'er see another clan charging nonsense, the hangman burned their banners. So take castle stock and Raising's Island came, and the broad at night the album colours came. The symbol of the clan they could never tame, only James knew where to hide it. And for 200 years it lay hidden there in the Stuarts' secret lair. The day Edinburgh Castle was built in care, and where its bullet hole can be seen there.
Livingstone's kept a low profile like most other people with Jacobite leanings, for obvious reasons. But the government were far from secure in the immediate years after Culloden. The threat of possibly another rebellion was always stirring. Then 5 years after Culloden, an event happened to shake the nation again. A government factor, Colin Campbell, sometimes known as the Red Fox, was gathering his extortionate rents from the Stuarts of Appin when he was shot and killed by an unknown assailant. Some say it was a man called Alan Breck, who was a known Jacobite, who pulled the trigger, but we'll never know because whoever it was escaped through the trees. But somebody had to pay for it big time. The nation had to see the power of the government and that it would be merciless. They accused the senior figure of Appin, James Stewart of the Glen, even though it was proved he was nowhere near the scene. All would see the might of the government through the sham trial with his jury made up entirely of Campbells. And if you're ever passing Ballyhourish, have a look up on the hill up there where the bridge is today. There's a cairn up there, a wee monument, marking the spot where they hung James. It's still there. Robert Louis Stevenson created one of the greatest pieces of literature to come out of Scotland from this story. It was called Kidnapped. I wonder if James Stewart of the Glen could stand here where I am now. What would he say about it all?
It was 2 years ago they condemned me to hang for all time on this lump of a hill. When my bones fell apart and dropped down to the ground, they wired them together and raised them again. So I'm hanging here still. And the view that I had was a wonder at first, you could say it took my breath away. But I've now had enough of the air, sun and sky. I long for the day when they take me away, and the earth soothes this terrible pain. And people who pass by this place turn their eyes to the ground as they whisper my name. There hangs James of the Glen. Not too far from here, and he earned it from what I have heard. And if you raise rents on the heads of the poor, I suppose you get all you deserve. The death of a Campbell's not tragic at all, with all things taken into account. But the culprit went free, so they blamed it on me, with my innocence never in doubt. And people who pass by this place turn their eyes to the ground, they whisper my name, James of the Glen. Soldiers who said it might be taking turns to protect me from her. whisper my name. James of the Glen. Up here when you're swinging about on the wind. But I've heard that the Livingstone boys have a plan that will bring all this pain to an end. They'll come in the date and they'll take me away and they'll bury me under the earth. And I will lie there in peace with my soul floating free, a freedom it surely deserves. And people who pass by this place will look up and smile and remember my name, James of the Glen.
So another great injustice had been perpetrated in Scotland with the hanging of an innocent man. Think of the agonies his family must have went through. Then multiply a millionfold with the agonies the nation was going through. The government in London had created its desired effect. James's sentence was for him to hang there for all eternity. That meant this body had to hang there, and they paid soldiers to take it in turn over 3 shifts, 6 to 2, 2 to 10, to look after this thing, hanging up there. Eventually, of course, the birds stripped the flesh off the body, just left the bones just, and then the bones fell. That was reported back, and the government said the sentence was he was to hang there for all eternity. So they wired the bloody bones back together and rehung it, paying people to look after this as a lesson to the peasants. That was the last resort for 4 brothers called Livingstone. They decided to dupe the guard who would be on duty one night, take him to the local inn in Glencoe there, buy him a pint, he'll be glad of the break, I'm sure. And the other brothers would cut the body down, put it in a boat, row it across the loch and bury it. And that's what they did. They buried it as befits the honour of the man. But there were no more Jacobite threats. The monster that was London was too big. The Bonnie Prince was 32 now, and he even came back to London incognito. Would have thought of raising another army and get more innocent people slaughtered, but he left in no doubt that there was absolutely no chance this time. So he went back to France, and then latterly back to Italy where he was born and where he died a drunk. Like most of the royal house of Stuart, he thought more of himself than he did of the people, who would have, and did, follow him to the death. Such was their undeserved loyalty. And the Livingstone boys paid the price too. Anonymity for a very long time. 2 of the boys went to America, and they were never seen again. Neil went to the island of Mull and he hid in a cave there for some years. It begins to sound strangely familiar again, this story. Did he know meet and marry a girl from Mull, and they had a big family. But the Jacobite threat to the nation was completely gone by now, and Neil got on with everyday life, having his own croft, a certain degree of stability, until a domestic feud forced him to make another life-changing decision. He decided to leave Mull for good with his family and settled again on the mainland, but not back to Happen, where they had come from and where all the controversy was about. No, he would go where there was much employment, an opportunity to be had. Scotland was thriving and beginning to thrive in the cotton industry and the start of the coal industry at the end of the 1700s and into the 1800s. So in 1792 he headed south, where this ex-warrior, who had a warrior father, a warrior grandfather, all the way back to the naked, hairy, Stone Age man. And he settled in Blantyre.
Allen named to sail their skin, took to their heels a new life to begin, left poor brother Neil defending his aim and never set foot in old Scotia again. Neil ran to a cave on Mull's wild rocky shore, hiding away till they chased him no more. And he married a lass in a house for a Wednesday, a chiel accused him of stealing his grave. The new factors are coming to take her the land, the liar was waiting to offer his hand. Offer him the grain that been stole, the greed for Neil's land had made him sell his soul. Accused by the lady, live victim, it's true, Neil's honour in question, he knows what to do. On proving his innocence, called the man's bluff, moved his clan to the mainland, he'd suffered enough.
These were his enlightened years. Indeed, the whole of Scotland now entered its enlightened years. In these next 30 or 40 years, the world was given the benefit of the genius of Scotland like never before. Neil Livingstone was privileged to read and hear about, in his lifetime, such great gifts to the world as Robert Burns, James Watt, Sir Walter Scott, Thomas Telford, John McAdam, Adam Smith, David Hume, an endless list of genius. And all the while the world was changing with its new sense of freedom. That's Thomas Telford. Is another one, Greg? Telford Bridges and Roads. What's after that, Greg? Adam Brothers. Another one, Greg. James Watt. France had freed itself of royal tyranny and then replaced it with another kind of tyranny via Napoleon Bonaparte, who tried to build his own empire in Europe. The Livingstone family, they were also involved in the fight against Napoleon with both Lord Nelson and the Duke of Wellington. It's a Scottish soldier for painting I did one of Wellington's soldiers at Waterloo. It's been well documented that the younger Neil's brothers, older brothers, had fought in the Napoleonic Wars. I found that out too. You would have heard about the American soldier George Washington in America, winning independence from Britain. Fantastic. Imagine that. When I talk about it, I can see their faces, it's just like yesterday. I don't know if you get it, but I get it all the time.
Livingstone's my name. To the mainland I came when I was just a lad long ago. And I can tell to you the things I've lived through. Seen Scotland show the way to the world, to the world. With brains in place of brawn, the sense unfurled. Men of letters they have bound, Walter Scott and Robbie Burns, traitor hero John Paul Jones is out the sea. Adam Smith is making loads, John McAdam's building roads, philosopher Dave Hume showed the way, while Tom Telford's building bridges every day. Steam engines give us more than we'll ever had before, a new kind of revolution thunders on. Well, in the Strait of Grove, machines made produce flow in a quicker, easy way. The world would go. And for the end that named James Watt, we don't know. Well, but Canada the sea, fighting to keep us free, for the horror of Napoleon Bonaparte. Some served in victory with Nelson on the sea, and when they took at Waterloo, the French they slew, leaving bonny Scotland free for me and you.
So Neil's youngest son, also called Neil, settled in Blantyre, where he grew up to adulthood and married the tailor's daughter in the mill there, in the village. They had a good start to life and they raised a family of their own. Neil looked forward to telling his sons tales of adventure through all the years of his family. Then the second son, they called him David. And when he was a boy, he listened to his father and he said, "I'll beat that." And boy did he beat that. There's nothing I can tell you about David Livingstone. As I said at the beginning, it's not about him. It's about his ancestors and his descendants. There is one interesting wee coincidence I would like to throw in, which not a lot of people know about, or have even thought of through. His forefathers, the Livingstones, they brought back in 1752 the body that they had cut down of an honest man, James Stewart of the Glen, and carried him away in secret, at great risk to themselves, over land and water, to give him a decent Christian burial. If you remember, when David Livingstone died in deepest, darkest Africa, there was two faithful Africans called Susi and Chuma, who wrapped up his body and carried it halfway across the continent at great risk to themselves to bring it back to Britain, to be buried with the greats in Westminster Abbey. It was almost like a debt being paid back to the Livingstones. It's just a wee thought. But it's also interesting that at the time of David's education, to set him up for the great life that he was about to have and that waited on him, his own country was being subjected to genocide in the Highlands. agricultural theorists and governmental parasites were trying to find a way of making the Highland economy work for them so that they could grow rich in this new age. The ongoing wars in Europe created a great need for mutton and wool, and prices, of course, soared through the roofs. They discovered that the black-faced and Cheviot sheep could survive in the most extreme weathers in Scotland where others could not. Poor Highland people had no chance. Factors had a whole culture wiped out. Cleared away from the land for sheep. Only Satan would have approved their methods. Between 1800 and 1860, the names of Patrick Seller and James Loch came to be amongst the most hated in Highland history. They took a perverse evil joy in burning people out of their homes. There's one village in Strathnaver had 250 houses set alight in one day. Religion played its usual ugly part. The Reverend David Mackenzie from there had been offered the Grand Manse and the whole parish of Farr in Betty Hill if he would instruct the people there to obey him and abandon their homes. He told them via sermons about what would happen to them in hell's fire if they didn't go. Some died in the hills with their babies, and some died in the shores at the sea when they could go no further. This happened all over the Highlands and Islands of Scotland. Where you have light in the world, you also have shade, and if evil lurks anywhere, it lurks in the shade. And my Highlands were in the shade in those days. The lucky ones were the ones who were shipped over the sea to the Americas and Antigua.
Sail for the Americas tomorrow, leave our past, our history behind, carry with us memories of joy and love and sorrow, and hope the wounds of leaving will close and heal in time. The longboat lies along the shoreline, and it'll ferry us to the ship come break of day. Then they'll turn her to the west, steer for the horizon, and off into our futures we will sail away. Heading out for Canada's white spaces, where a man must earn his worth, or so they say. We leave behind us lots of those who stole the land God gave us. Still I know deep down inside my heart I'd rather stay. Driven out of hearth and home, there's nothing here for me. Driven down to the waterside, driven out to sea. Heading out for Canada, the freedom I've never known. You know, even the man of God watched on as the Lord's tore down our home. Still, we'll leave all that behind, should we survive this voyage. I prefer the servitude of sheep to men. And I'll take my place in freedom's land, secure within the knowledge. Me and mine will never bend the knee to a man called Lord again. Driven out of hearth and home, there's nothing here for me. Driven down to the waters, driven down to sea.
Back in this 21st century, I got to thinking, what a story this is about. There's absolutely no reason for that slide there other than I love it.
That's you.
There's a man called Muir who fought in the Crimean War. Aye, it's fantastic photograph. If he had been there at Wounded Knee, he wouldn't have suffered so much. Anyway, the adventure that was obviously in the genes of the generations of Livingstones through the years until David came along and showed itself to be present in him too. I was wondering about that, and I knew that he had had a family himself. And it struck me that maybe those same genes might be passed on to his offspring. Did any of them have interesting lives to speak of? Well, David's first son, the boy called Robert, he was born in Africa in 1845 and was by all accounts a restless sort of boy. There's a slide there of David and his son Robert. Born in Africa, but he was sent back to Scotland to be educated in Hamilton and then to Kendal in England, where he became bored out of his head and decided that he should go back to Africa and try and find his father. He never did find him. So what happened was, he decided to head off to the New World in search of adventure and chase his fortune there. But America in 1863 wasn't the best place to go for peace and quiet. The Civil War was on. And David joined the Union Army. Something about the warrior in every Livingstone born. I then found out that Robert Livingstone joined the Union Army and fought at Gettysburg and at Richmond where he was taken prisoner, wounded by the Confederates. 19 years of age, he died in the prison camp there in Salisbury, North Carolina. He's listed in the cemetery records there as Private Rupert Vincent, number 3263. There's a Rupert Vincent come in there, I can hear you saying it. When his father David died, on the 30th of April 1873, his papers and belongings were brought back from Africa with the body. And amongst other things, they found a rake of letters from America, from somebody called Rupert Vincent, and nobody knew who this Rupert Vincent could be. Until research was done in 1932. Remember I told you somewhere earlier on about the 1930s? And a search of the army records, the Union Army records in that area, in 1864, identified him as Robert Livingstone. That's when they realised who this Rupert Vincent was. He had chosen, hear this, he had chosen to use the name Rupert Vincent, signed his name that at the end of every letter back home to his father, in case he had chosen the wrong side to fight for freedom. The Union were fighting for the freedom of the slaves. And at that point, he wasn't just absolutely certain that he had chosen the right side. So he chose to sign his name differently, in case he should bring shame on his father's great name. He knew this and his father knew this, but nobody else knew the reason for Rupert Vincent. Didn't that just grab your heart and squeeze it? Incidentally, by some quirk of coincidence that I was saying about 1932, a certain Stuarts of Appin flag, that's the Civil War scene, could have been in that battle. 1932, a certain Stuarts of Appin flag emerged from Castle Stocker, where it had lain for 180 years, to be given back to the nation, and now rests in Edinburgh Castle. Go and have a look. Remember me, remember us.
1863, Robert took a little trip, left the Burman shores of Africa on a sailing ship. The new world beckons as adventure there to find, in the war against the rebels who were of a different mind. Well, the South were for slavery, the North they were opposed to it. How can you have oppression in the land of brave and free? Robert joined the Yanks to fight against the Southerners, to free slaves, a cause with which his father would agree. Enlisting on the wrong side would cause his father shame, so he saved Rupert Vincent to protect the family name. Wounded here at Richmond in the rebel prison camp, died and laid to rest under muck thick and damp. And when Father David died, they found a bunch of letters, the name they didn't recognise, but when it came to light, the Rupert of the tale was really the explorer's son, covered new in glory cause he'd fought the freedom fight. Well, they ran to officials and they ran to the Senate and they ran to the office of the US President. Nations would agree in 1933, the name of Robert Livingstone's a symbol of the free. Coughingly.
So I will take my leave of you now, and if I don't see you again in this generation, I'll see you in the next.
So there you go, our tale is told and it makes you stop and think. 500 years just one family link. 500 years and always they've been there or thereabout, slipping in and out of focus, but they left their mark without a doubt. How many other families have stories just like this? How many tales and histories lie hidden in the mist? How many family memories have been mislaid through time? Ancestors now forgotten, just like yours and just like mine. In our tapestry of history there runs a single thread of Livingstones of our generations have touched, it must be said. So many of the stories of our past and bygone days, in that thread when joined with other threads, shapes the world we know today. So now our story's over and Vic Duncan's closed the book. Big Jim's guitar has been put down and my voice is done to boot. We've done our bit in telling you a tale not to be missed, and now your humble player are going to sod off and get paid.
Merci.